welcome everyone. Now, I know our audience today is extremely anxious to receive some great information on how to deal with their own recruitment struggles. So I just want to remind everyone, if you do have any questions during the presentation, please include them in the chat and we will address them at the conclusion today. So without further ado, I'd like to turn our conversation over to our moderator. So take it away, Ken.
As mentioned, today we're going to provide some great insights into this ongoing issue that pretty much all businesses face, especially contract cleaners, and that is finding and keeping good people. Firstly, I'd like to thank our three council members, Mike, Tony, and Fernando, for taking the time to be with us today. And I'd also like to thank the audience for participating. We have quite a diverse audience with us today, with representation obviously from contract cleaners, but also universities, school boards, municipalities, real estate, and property management, as well as hospitality. Again, thanks for joining us today. We're now going to walk you through several questions that we've prepared that speak to the points of recruitment, training, and also retention of people. We're going to start with the recruitment side, and the first question I'm going to ask is what the current status is when it comes to recruitment for each of your three companies. There's really four parts to this question that I would like you to address. First of all, are you finding it more difficult to fulfill your human resource requirements? Has the issue worsened in the post-pandemic scenario? Where are you looking? Where have you found success finding people? And do you utilize any online hiring sites such as Indeed or others to find your recruitment opportunities? So why don't we start with Mike, if you'd like to provide your comments, please.
Sure. Good morning. I don't think it's a big surprise to any of us that it is difficult to find good workers and people. Labor in all aspects, from even offices to our cleaners. It is very difficult, and it's gotten worse over the pandemic. So I don't think that's a real big surprise. So what that forces us to do is to really look at unique ways or different ways of recruiting them. Where we're kind of looking for us is, and we're finding pretty good success, is really the social media strategies that we have, by communities and by regions that we do. Primarily we subcontract ourselves, and our subcontract model we use for our subcontractors is Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all those type of kind of focused on those kind of areas. We have a lot of contractors from the Spanish-speaking community. Our social media focuses on our promoting the United brand within these communities. So we're getting lots of feedback, just by our branding from these potential partners of ours. So that really helps. We started a really big point too, is we felt it was really important that we started our own training of our people, not just accepting people that come in and then just throw them in a store or throw them in a location. So we actually created we call it a United Campus. And this is a learning and development hub that allows us to build our pipeline of resources. It gets people trained in the janitorial industry and gets them ready to transition into locations. It's a quite extensive kind of program for them to go through, but it really helped us, get really well-trained people into our locations. It takes a lot of time, but that's a real big focus of ours. We also have a strong referral program with all our partners that attract new partners into our base, which we offer that to our existing partners. We also offer a business program to assist our new partners that are interested in janitorial industry and help them really start their own business. That's also a very they're sometimes intimidated through that. So we help them really kind of through this business program start their own businesses.
Tony, can you give us a perspective on how you approach these issues from your organization?
Michael did a phenomenal recap of what we're all currently seeing. What was surprising is when I was at the ISSA show last year, and you're finding out that the people in your industry are facing 200% turnover in staff. It's kind of scary, and the reasons vary from pre-COVID, after COVID, staffing issues, language, training issues. I think that what we're trying to do that might be a little bit different than what Michael had mentioned is that we're trying to diversify in hiring our staff to accommodate our staff as much as possible, because we've realized, the upcoming generation is not what we're necessarily accustomed to seeing. So we're focusing on trying to work, do you want to work a part-time job? Do you want to work from 3 to 4? We're going back to our customers and talking to them and reviewing what changes can be made and can't be made in order to see if we can retain the staff. Because it's not so much changing your staff, it's that the cost that it costs an organization, and the services that we provide are important to our customers. And if you're having a 200% turnover, that's astronomical. Like in 43 years in this business, it's like I've never really seen or heard 200%. Like we were worried that when we were having 25-30% turnover, and we were wondering, what are we doing wrong? But I don't think necessarily is that we're doing something wrong. I think that we have to maybe see at a different angle and adapt to the change of culture that's coming up, and try to work with them to accommodate our business. Because if we don't, every field in North America there's a labor shortage.
Tony and Fernando, talk to this point from Hallmark's perspective.
I agree with Michael and Tony. We find it that it's also difficult to hire frontline staff. That's not a surprise. I think in this industry, it is a challenge. I think we all face this challenge. It is better, I would say, than during the pandemic. Things are getting a little bit better. The pool seems to be getting bigger. And I think one of the reasons for it might be also the fact that the wages and benefits are getting better as well through either the CBAs that we have, or companies' own efforts. So that is also helping to attract some staff. In terms of where we're looking, same ways as the folks, we have, social media or on website. We have created a candidate board where we have every single application and phone calls that it goes into there. And then we divided that by region, which to Tony's point, makes it easier for the staff. You don't want to send a staff from one corner to the city to the other. So that helps, facilitating that. But I think one great thing, it is still the word of mouth. That is a good way to attract reliable candidates. And thinking about that, we here at Hallmark, we have created our own referral program, just like Michael has, which we find that has been very successful. It's been over a year now. And basically, we're compensated the staff financially if they refer somebody to us. Again, we invested a lot of money in it, and we find great value in every single dollar that we invested. Because, for the most part, the folks that we found through this process still working with us today. So, yeah, so that's one way.
Thanks, Fernando. I just want to remind everyone, if you do have questions, please include them in the chat and we will address them at the conclusion of our discussion. The next question is going to refer to the topic of ghosting, and ghosting in the industry with regard to recruitment and hiring of people. This relates to people who don't show up for interviews or work. I'd like to ask our panelists the question about ghosting from two perspectives. One is from the perspective of you've identified a candidate and you've set up a meeting with that candidate and they don't show up. And the other perspective, that you actually got a new hire or hires and they don't show up for their first shift. I'd like to ask you to comment as to what degree this is happening now and how you deal with it. We'll start with Tony first.
So in the hiring process, it's, we proceed basically like any other organization. And when we submit ads or we post some things, we always hope that, these people do show up. We at one point thought it was like an isolated problem that people weren't showing up to the interviews, but then what we found out is that this was not only us, but people, there might be a bigger variety of opportunity up there. So they'll set up an appointment, they'll schedule it, and then they don't show up. Or if we're hiring them, many times they just don't show up to work. And it seems to be more commonly seen than ever before that, people either find something or lose interest in what we're doing. And one of the reasons, is also wages. And like, Fernando said, wages in our field are going up, with CBAs and are regulated by CBAs. That helps. It makes it a little bit more interesting that you're getting paid over and above the minimum wage. So yes, ghosting does pose a problem, for us, because it just makes us work harder. They don't show up to work, or you hire 7 people and 2 don't show up. Your supervisors or your management team have to kick in and do what has to be done.
Thanks, Tony. Fernando, would you like to chime in on this?
I agree with Tony. I think when it comes to the interview process and they don't show up, we try to line up a few interviews and have, some options. If they don't show up, you got to move on, right, to the next one. Unfortunately, that's how it is. But after that process, when you hire someone, if the first day they don't show up, we here at Hallmark, we're fortunate enough to have a large presence in the GTA. So we have many on-call resources that can step in for a short term and fill in that position. So I think that's how we deal with that. Like Tony said, management supervisors, they have to step in as well. I believe all of us here experience the same thing when we have, a contract. Ever building, there's always that staff that it's willing to do more and put in overtime hours. So that's another way we kind of have in terms of filling in for positions when, in the first day or in a couple of first days, they don't show up to work. So,
Mike, is this an issue at United, and how do you guys deal with it?
For us, I have to agree with Fernando here, because he made a good point on when it's employees, and they don't show up and they ghost you, you have to have alternatives to kind of throw in those specific situations. For us, though, we, as I mentioned before, we do a lot of subcontracting, and we call them partners. And through our onboarding process, so we've created obviously steps that kind of limit the opportunities for them just to leave, before the job gets done. So we get more of a commitment from them well before they get to a location. So it's a little easier, I think, when you have partners like that than when you have employees. Employees can just change their minds at the last minute, I guess, or they find something else very quickly. So when it's somebody's own company, they take a little more care. So in our situation, it's not a real relevant problem for us because of, I guess, these steps that we have in place and the contracting model.
Next question we have focuses on the issue of turnover. And that question is, when you're looking for quality workers, you must be thinking about turnover. And at the end of the day, hiring is a business expense. So you want to be confident in your hiring practices. From 2 perspectives, what are the traits you look for in your workers? And are there indicators you flag when interviewing potential candidates? Please share these ideas or indicators with the audience. Let's start with Fernando.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, there are a few indicators, I would say. So a good one would be, when you interview someone and the person doesn't jump between jobs very quickly. So that to us, it's a very good indicator, when you're interviewing somebody. And again, I think an interview, it's an exchange, right? So you got to take that time to feel the candidates, see if they're focused, see if they're friendly. Good eye contact, body language, those are all good resources, good indicators. Again, during the interview process, you can ask questions that will reveal their personality. Perhaps you can impose a situation in a building and see how they would react and answer those questions. So that those are some good indicators. But again, if there's some traits, we here at Hallmark, we like to hire our staff based on their character, right? Anybody can learn cleaning, they can be trained if they're unwilling to learn. So our goal is to feel the candidate, like I said, and feel that if they're going to be reliable candidates, someone that is going to be willing to learn, they're strong character and good attitude. So those are some traits that we like to look for when it comes to that.
Thank you, Fernando. Tony, would you like to add your comments, please?
And I agree. Once again, I think that we're all living basically, and our strategic ways of hiring people and having them on board is all basically the same, somewhat slightly different. What I've learned to ask is that, what is your me time? What is it that makes you interested, and what is your downtime? Trying to understand what the employees' needs are. When I walk into the interviews, for me, it was very important to just hire somebody, but now is more in depth, like, what do you need? How many children do you have? Do you have babysitters? Just to see if we can place them or accommodate them as much as possible. Because if you're able to accommodate your candidates or your new hires, they're more, they'll say, hey, you know what? They're trying to work with me. So if they're trying to work with me, people will actually show up to work. It's just isolating and getting those right candidates to come in, and then once they come in, they don't feel like as if they're just a number, or they're just an employee, or they're going to be thrown out of sight. They need to be feel like they're part of a team. They're human beings like us, and just because they're coming in to provide janitorial services, it doesn't make them any less or any better than anybody else. It's just, what we want to sympathize with people. We have to learn how to sympathize with people and understand that, once again, times are changing. You might have more single parents nowadays, and they might need to be at the daycare. So we try to ask the questions that we were never asked before, because again, generations change, times change, and I think that us as employers play a big role when a candidate comes through the door, instead of saying, this is your shift. I would have said that maybe 10 years ago, but 10 years ago, we weren't having the labor issues that we're currently living through right now. So if I'm going to have that attitude, it's going to be more challenging for my organization, or I think for any organization, to hire new individuals.
Tony, how about you, Mike?
Similar to Fernando and Tony, we focus very closely on the employee's personality and also cultural fit. If they're really going to fit into our culture, we're striving to have a very balanced culture here. Work-life balance and the kind of how they interact with other people, very important. So we really focus on that. And we even do certain programs for like profiling candidates. We give them, make sure they understand the clear roles and responsibilities. Nothing worse than when you get into the next stages and then they didn't understand what they were supposed to do and they back out. So it's very, very important to give them the clear roles and responsibilities of the job. Even clearly identify the KPIs so they know what they're getting into. We ask a lot of behavioral questions during the interview to really assess their adaptability. And then some key points that we look for is really the way they answer, making sure that they provide specific answers to the questions, not kind of over around questions.
Thanks, Mike. So on the subject of new hires, let's talk about how you onboard them. And do you have standard practices and policies in place to help with that process? Tony, maybe you can start us off on this topic.
It's, our standard policy is we have an onboarding documentation that we go through, and part of that process will include, training. We step it out, like for an example, if you're coming in as a heavy duty, this is what the heavy duty classifications are. As you know, we're SIM certified, so we utilize a lot of the information that comes with the SIM certification in order to hire our staff, because it's a true reflection of our industry. So seeing that we have that too, we're able to be able to promote. It's not just here's a bucket and mop and go clean. Is that there's actually a process that's established with the SIM certification that your employees follow. So, and it helps a lot. So yeah, so training is a big part of what we do, and having somebody show up on site and not know what they're doing or very limited information, it can be challenging. So we do have our procedures in place at all levels, like at executive levels to our human resources department, where they, once again, they screen, they make sure that the employees are a fit for us and we're a fit for them. And, step by step, and hopefully they'll come on board.
Fernando, would you please add your thoughts from Hallmark's perspective on how you welcome new employees into the organization and get them settled and ready to begin their work?
Here at a Hallmark, after that process of hiring and clearances and all that stuff, we start our orientation process. And right now we are migrating this process over to e-learning. And the reason for that is we found it in the past when we were, training the staff and orienting them on what to do and whatnot. They'll just nod their heads and yeah, we understand and all that, but they weren't necessarily observing the information. So the e-learning provides that opportunity to interact with the software in kind of like in a gamely way, where the cleaning practices become more comprehensive. So they're not only listening to someone teaching them on what to do, but they're actually having to put in practice what they're learning in real time. So that's been really a game changer for us when it comes to that onboarding process.
Thanks, Fernando. Mike?
For us, we have a very detailed onboarding plan for all our new hires internally. Our frontline staff go through roughly around a 4 to 6 week training program, learning all the different aspects of their role and also the company. For our partners, it's a little more detailed. For our partners, our stores, our cleaning crews, they have a very detailed onboarding process that covers compliancy, safety, job knowledge, and all the components to that. And this is where I mentioned earlier our United Campus comes in, where they really, we have 2 parts to the campus, which we use technology and to help them learn, and also firsthand in-store training as well. So those two very important parts are part of that whole campus.
So the next question is going to focus around the issue of language, and the question I'd like to pose to the panel is threefold. Is language an issue during interviewing or onboarding, as we just discussed? How do you deal with it if it's a barrier? And do you offer training materials in other languages aside from English and French to help those individuals who may not have mastered the English or French language at this point in time? I'd like to ask Fernando to start us off on this, please.
Look, I think this is very common, challenge that we all have in this industry. It can be very difficult, but I think for the most part, our management teams and site leaders, they do speak another language. And that facilitates the process of interview and onboarding. Mainly in the interview, I think in the onboarding process, we with our new tool, that kind of like eliminates that challenge, because it's almost a non-verbal tool. You don't necessarily need to speak English in order to learn and understand. So that takes care of that. You said there was another part of the question, Ken. We offer training in different languages. Yes, we do. Besides the e-learning, a lot of our other written documentations are available in multiple languages based on demographic of the staff. So to answer your question, yes.
Thank you, Fernando. Mike, could you talk about the language issue in terms of it? Is it an issue at United and how you deal with it? Do you offer training materials in other languages, et cetera, to help those people get on board and acclimated into the organization?
Absolutely. It's really not an issue. It's an opportunity, because we have a very diverse company, and so we do have to, as we hire multi-language people within the company, we have to have the tools that are in those languages as well. So yeah, absolutely. We adapt a lot of our trends in other languages. We're even looking at we have the typical Spanish, French, and English. We're also looking at even Arabic and Punjabi because there's such a diverse country. So we adapt many of the languages because we're all we have hiring practices that are focused around the diversity. So that's really important. We have representatives on our recruitment, and all our internal teams. They're all they have the three major languages, so English, French, and Spanish. There's multiple people within our organization that can speak one of those languages, or sometimes all three. It's very similar to what Fernando was saying.
And Tony, could you please add your thoughts from SPEICO's perspective?
So our onboarding, usually we have somebody that can translate to the language that the individuals is coming. And usually it's the, mouth of word of information that we get one employee that comes in through another employee. So it's quite simplified when it comes to the initial hire process, because there's usually somebody there that will speak the language. And here, like we have within the office, I think that we're close to about 8 languages that people speak fluently. So we're pretty diversified when it comes to being able to get our message across and understanding the message that we're trying to receive. So in barriers, it can be difficult, but you know what? Training documents, we work as we go along, and we go geographically to the areas that are needed. And you know what? Google Translate is a powerful tool, and it's it helps. It's not 100%, but when somebody is alone and they need a piece of information, it's important that the information is accessible to them, and we will actually translate in their language, and just to make sure that the message is across and there's no miscommunication, right? So it can be challenging, but I think we're all learning how to deal with it, because there's a lot more cultures and diverse backgrounds. So definitely, it can be challenging, but I think it's a thing that we're learning to cope with as we move forward.
Thanks, Tony. We're now going to move away from recruitment and go into the area of training. We have a question that has 2 parts. In terms of training, is there a standard playbook that you have, and what does it look like? Do you train in levels, i.e., do your workers receive basic training? And if those workers are engaged and show interest or potential, do you build on that training as the employee progresses up the company ranks? And secondly, do you ever lose workers after you train them because they've decided they don't want the job, it's too difficult, they find something else? And on average, do you know how many people you lose? Is it a big or small issue? Fernando, if you could start us off from Hallmark's perspective and talk to this issue.
Look, I think I'll be lying if I said that we never lose staff after training them. I think we all experience the same thing here. We do provide all our new staff, our new employees, with the orientation before they start their shifts. And that would include all kinds of training from health and safety, customer service, humans, bloodborne pathogens training, disinfection, what else? Hallmark protocols, the building rules, and so on. Yes, we do it. And in terms of staff that show interest and potential, Hallmark, it's a company that's always been, willing to promote within, right? I'm an example of that. I started as a heavy duty, a day porter. So when we identify someone that will show interest and potential, we take that opportunity to train them above and beyond on whatever we find that they will need, and we put them in a plan. So yeah, and in terms of losing the workers, yes, like I said at the beginning, we do lose. It happens. Sometimes people use cleaning as a bridge to go to another job, and they might start with us, and then they find a job, within their line of field and things like that. But we found that the more comprehensive and clear training is, the higher will be the chances of success in retaining those staff. So,
Mike, I remember my days working with your organization. You've got a pretty robust training program that I think you're pretty proud of. So I'm sure you have a lot to say in this.
We spent a lot of time and money developing a real strong training system. And another part of our training, I mentioned the campus. That's for our partners. Another part of our training is we do have a standard playbook that we use, and we call it smart training. And it's really the basic levels of health and safety, chemical, material, equipment, and many other options depending on the level of the job or the contract for those people. So that's a real focus of ours. We spend a lot of time working with our people on that. And excuse me. And as far as having our workers engaged, and having levels. We do have levels based on the type of job we're completing. We have just over 80 training options depending on the site location and employees, or even the subcontractors that are cleaning it. It's all based on the scope of work, and which they're performing. This training is also going on as a consistent monitoring. So not only we don't just train them and then leave them in the stores. We are constantly monitoring them as well through our audits, our VRs. So now, having said that, we can do we do every once in a while lose people and lose even partners. Now I think our based on our focus on training, I think our retention is pretty good with our partners. We're about 2% for losing them. So it's not bad. It's quite low. And I think it has to do with really this focus we have on the training programs.
Thanks, Mike. And Tony, can you talk about training programs from SPEICO's perspective, please?
We do. We also have our training programs in place, and we do train by classification of work and area of work. And like to Fernando's example, there's a series of training that are mandatory right now. From health and safety to dealing with the customers and client rules and regulations. So we do. We really emphasize on training. Training is important. We have a dedicated trainer here in Quebec that will train the individuals at different classifications and at different level. Not everybody, unfortunately, learns at the same way. And productivity, right? Each individual works at a different pace. So we learn to work with the individuals, and we try to explain to them that these are the levels of quality that we want and the levels of productivity that we're looking for. Do we lose workers after we train them? We do. It's sometimes it's not what they expect to be doing, or they just find something else. So we do, but that's part of the day-to-day challenges that we have. We're lucky that it doesn't happen enough, but when it does happen, we always ask ourselves, what did we do? So it can be challenging when you do lose workers, but it's our business, right? It's our business core, and we try to replace them as soon as possible.
Thanks, Tony. So now we're going to move on to the topic of retention. And obviously, you've recruited people, you've brought them on board into the company, you've trained them, and you've invested a lot of time and a lot of money into the new hires. Obviously, you want to keep them. On the topic of retention, in terms of incentives, what do each of your firms offer to keep employees engaged? And is salary an important part of your retention strategy? Or are there other important factors in your strategies to keep the good people that you've found onboarded and trained? Mike, if you would please address this question.
Sure. Yeah. Incentives are very important. Having competitive compensation, benefits, a retirement plan, bonus programs. Those are all very important key parts. We on top of that, we really, as I mentioned before, really focus on flexible work arrangements for our people. Even more so after the pandemic. With working from home, we've really solidified our hybrid work model after the pandemic. This allows our team members to live further from head office, so they don't come here as often, and it helps them better manage their own financials, and also provides a better work-life balance, which is very important to us. Is the salary part of our retention strategy? I would say yes. We review our salary compensation to the market standards constantly, and we really try to focus on being competitive in the market. We also focus on total rewards for our retention strategy. Not just including more money, but the flexibility, the vacation, promoting within our own company. Not just going out and filling spots from outside. We really want to promote our people from within the company. Backup and succession planning is very, very important. Having a succession plan for people, and then even leadership growth, investing in our leaders, making sure that they're constantly improving themselves. And we're continually looking to level up on our total compensation and improve our group benefit offerings.
Fernando, could you add your thoughts? Obviously, you've been with Hallmark for a long time, and you've seen firsthand what it takes starting in the ranks at the front line and working your way up to where you are today. What has Hallmark done to paint out what the future may look like for you? And how did they go about keeping you invested in the company and staying with the organization to reach the point that you are today? Please comment on your perspective.
Very similar to what Michael said, that I can kind of break it. For an economic standpoint, I think we have a few ways to keep the staff engaged, from competitive wages, recognition letters that will include gift cards, bonuses, pension plans that we have implemented, benefits, the referral program, scholarship program that we're very proud as well. What else? Beyond their vacation entitlement, they have personal days, sick days. So all that helps in terms of an economic standpoint. But I think what we find the most effective is our culture, right? We got to give our staff a reason to come to work every day, make them feel valuable, provide them with meaningful work. I think that's very important. Empowering them. That's how I think we can keep them engaged. But yeah, those are the main points, as well. Investing in our management, giving them the tools. In this industry, every day there's something new, so we keep them engaged. We provide them with the necessary tools, so that they can get back to their jobs and provide the best to our staff. So that's also a good key there that Michael, I think, touched on that as well. You mentioned salary, right? So it's important part. I think yes, salary, it's very important. It's what gets the staff through the door. But I think what's keeping them with the company is the culture of the company. Absolutely, we all want to be compensate and compensate fairly, but I think that doesn't keep staff in the company. I think if the company doesn't have a good culture, you'll most likely lose those staff members regardless their salary.
Thanks, Fernando. Tony, you've been in the industry 44 years now. You've seen it all, right? From all those years that you've been in the industry, you have seen a lot when it comes to retention strategies that either work or don't work. And I wonder if you can comment on your experience. What are the keys that really work to keep people invested and interested in staying with an organization for the long term?
Ken, you listen to the organizations that surround you, and I think that our intents are all basically different and very similar, and our paths are all the same. At the end of the day, we want to be good companies, we want to have good employees, and as the years go by, it comes to become a little bit more challenging. But what I do find is respecting the individuals that work for you, dealing with people over the years. I remember when I was 18, my attitude and my philosophies of seeing things were not necessarily how I see them today. I think that I was very fortunate to have worked for an organization that empowered my vision, my ideas. And that's what I do today, because I think empowering your staff is encouraging your staff. And by encouraging your staff, your staff becomes dedicated to you. I think that's a strong point. We're all basically doing the same things. And, what we do here is that, come Christmas, we give all our employees gift cards. We give gift cards to their children. We give gift cards to their grandchildren. we all do basically the same things in different ways because we value, and we're learning to value more and more employees, because before when you have 100 employees showing up at your door to work and they all show up to work, it would be a perfect way. But finding new ways and creative ways of maintaining staff it can be challenging. But I think is respect that individual that comes to work, because nobody is going to come up to them most likely and saying, "Hey, you're doing a good job." And over the years, in the last few years, in some of the properties that I work, the customers get involved and they turn around and they have incentive programs for the cleaners. It values them. And I think by sharing and showing value to the individuals that show up to work is sometimes far greater than the financial compensation that we get.
Nicely put, Tony. Okay, so I think we're coming pretty close to our time, so I'd like to get some parting thoughts before we go to the audience questions. If you could provide one piece of advice with our guests to help them in their recruitment, training, and retention strategies, what would you tell them? Fernando?
Look, I think I mentioned this before. We'd like to hire for character. I think that's the starting point. Be honest and transparent with your staff. Make them feel good about the jobs that they're doing. Okay, nobody wants to come and show up and do something that they don't think it's meaningful, right? Exercise that great environment that we all claim to have. Make them feel they belong. They're not a number, right? They're like, I think our colleagues here mentioned that before. They're people with feelings, families, and whatnot. Learn about them, right? So it's very important. We're dealing with people. Look, take care of them, and they will take care of you. That's, I think, how we'd like to approach.
Nice. Thank you. How about you, Michael?
Yeah, I would say don't just have a strategy around your business. Have a strategy around your people. Never forget that they're our biggest assets. Like Fernando said, make them happy. Through the compensation, through the healthy culture, work-life balance, and they will take care of you. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. How about you, Tony? I want to hear this, Tony. I really do.
Not a problem. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
We all have to remember that if somebody shows up at our addresses or their places, they're looking for a job, right? And some of them are, they're looking for a job. And if you could make it home for them, and if you could make it feel like home, and if you could make it that you care for them and that you appreciate them, it just empowers the individuals that represent your brand, your culture. And not only your brand and your cultures, it's also the customer's brand and culture. Because we have to remember that, showing up to work and being miserable is not the most pleasant thing when you're interacting, in a high profile mall or a high profile office tower. We don't want that. And teach our customers as well. They're just not cleaners. They're just not there for problems. They're just not there to picking up a spill. They're there for you. So empowering your employees, respecting them, and knowing that, they're there for a job. And if they're there for a job, it's because they need that money to live and to survive in today's economy.
Wow. Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's go to our audience. I do have a question here from John. Given the current tightness in the labor market, what is your experience with starting non-union wages, and what benefits are you offering non-union employees? Excuse me. Does anybody want to address that?
I think, if I might add, it's always challenging. Like here in Quebec, we're managed by a decree, and our wages are in general regulated. But working in Ontario for 14 years and understanding the market, it can be challenging, like when you're paying an individual $16 an hour versus as another employee paying $17 or $15.50. It can be challenging, and it is more challenging. And then when we're sitting down with our customers, we're letting them know, hey, you know what? If you go right up the street in Napanee, they're paying $22, $21 at McDonald's and Tim Hortons. It's like, help us help you. And a lot of them are starting to understand that these are individuals that, they need to make that dollar value go as far as possible, but they can't compete in the market of the homing and food and shopping when you're paying an individual $60. And as Fernando said before, In Ontario, the CBAs have gone up drastically. Ottawa, the same thing. It becomes a little bit more challenging in remote areas. We just started up a contract in Kingston, and the wages there, we're paying the cleaners there $21 because it's geographically what you have to pay, and the customer understands. It says, look, if I want my building to be clean, I'm going to pay the $21 to that cleaner. But I want that cleaner to show up to work. It's a high profile customer. And I think customers have to understand, clients have to understand. It says, hey, you know what? These are individuals that have food to put on the table. So let's review their wages. Let's review their benefits. Let's review their compensation. And, and being competitive at it. It's just not saying, hey, we're going to pay a cleaner $21 and let's get over and done with it. Let's be competitive in what we're doing and try to get the most out of those individuals for the dollar value that you have.
Well, Michael, Fernando, did you guys want to address that as well?
Look, agree with Tony. It's sometimes it's challenging. Especially if the location of the building it's not in transit, right? To Tony's point, you got to make it attractive to the staff, and if it's a non-union account, we got to think outside of the box, right? Negotiate with our customers, right? Look, what can we do here to keep them motivated to come to work? We here would like to pay above minimum wage, but again. Like Tony mentioned, when you have an account where it's unionized and there's the benefits are more attractive, you got to think outside of the box, and sometimes those negotiations need to take place with your customer as well.
Okay, I have a really good question here. Kindly expound upon your corporation's long-term strategy and ongoing efforts in the realm of artificial intelligence, particularly in the domain of visual artificial neural network training.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Right?
Yeah, that is. The previous organization that I worked for, we were very strong on robotics, right? And it's hard, when you do this for so many years and seeing the introduction of robotics coming into the industry. I think that we're not there yet with robotics coming in and replacing our human beings that are actually executing the work. But I think that we're getting closer to that. We don't seem to have a choice because our work is labor related. And if we can't find the laborers, we're going to have to find other ways of doing the work. We can't forget that robots don't replace people. It's people that have the robots replace the people. And that's something that we have to understand. We're all moving towards a new way of automated inspections, monitoring our people. AI is the future for us. We just scratched the surface of AI in the janitorial aspect, and we're growing with it. The companies are learning from us. We're moving on to all automated, hire packages. Our inspections are going to be automated. Our procedures are going to be automated. Our health and safety is going to be automated. Our training, our site specific, everything is moving into the automated world. It's going to have to be a big cloud just to hold all the information, but definitely we are moving in data because we have no choice, and robotics is going to play a big role in it. Being able to use and develop new apps and new ways of communicating with our people is the way to go. My kids and my grandkids, it's all on the iPad and all on the iPhone, and if we don't learn how to use these powerful tools that are available to them, we're going to fall behind. So definitely we have to develop ways of communicating, training with them, and talking to them, and moving forward and getting your message across through an automated way.
Yeah, if I can jump in and add to that, AI is something that we are really looking at and kind of focusing our future in. We're actually we're taking it so far. We're actually creating our own app, and it's not just a audit system, but it's a whole encompassing kind of program. I think AI really fits. What I agree with what Tony said was very interesting, and I agree 100%. There is times where AI helps us, And then but it can't replace, there's certain things or certain positions or tasks that the human has to do still. So I think if you find a good balance, bringing AI in, for reporting, that could be AI as an example, very simple, data collection, data management, those type of things really help an organization. But robotics, as far as replacing our cleaners, not there yet. We still need that. It's going to take still quite a while, I think, before something like that happens. So anyway, just to add to that.
Thanks, Mike. How about you, Fernando?
Look, I agree 100% with Mike and Tony. Robots are not quite there yet. I think we just scratched the surface. They are not replacing people. When the robot gets stuck in the middle of the lobby, guess who's going to go there and put it back in place, right? So that's one thing. I think sensoring, it's big. The future is we're gonna rely a lot in sensoring, either for building occupancy, for traffic, consumables. I think that is the reality now, and it's gonna only get better. Just like Michael mentioned, we have an app, Hallmark app, that does a lot of our, behind the scenes for our management team, and it's evolving. I think AI, it's great for those tools. We can utilize that, but in terms of technology that we can apply in terms of equipment and whatnot, I think there's a long way to go still.
Thank
Great
you.
question, though.
Thanks a lot for our guests today for sharing their information. And thank you for you all for attending today. And I hope you can join us for the next coffee talk. Thanks all. Have a great day.